Thanks very much, Shweta and Asel. Let me just share my screen first. All right, so I'm guessing that you can see the screen and you can hear me well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about stress and work-life balance. Both terms or phrases that you keep hearing, and things that I would say medical students and undergraduates often have a lot of difficulty with. You keep hearing people talking about the fact that they are stressed, and also talking about the need to try and establish some sort of work-life balance. So if we just venture into the topic of stress overall, there seems to be quite a bit of a sort of a negative connotation to the word stress. But in fact, stress is something that is really an adaptive response if the response is appropriate as per the situation, because really the stress response is a way of our body responding to a threatening situation. So if we go back to thousands and so many years ago, when we were hunters and gatherers and we were running around in the wild, you needed that stress response to be able to respond to, let's say, a dangerous animal jumping at you. Your body needed to react to it and either fight or run away. So the fight or flight response gets triggered when there are stress hormones that are released and your body is ready to deal with whatever threatening situation there is. So really, stress is an adaptive response. But unfortunately, what happens is, if you take our life nowadays, we don't have wild animals jumping at us. Instead, we have stressful life events. And these life events are things that are prolonged. It keeps going. And our body tends to get exhausted. Back then, when we had a wild animal running at us, we might either fight it out, we might run away. But after a while, you get to a stage where you then rest and you come to a stage of exhaustion, but your body is then able to get back to its normal state. But in situations where we have stresses in our life, these might go on and on and on for long, long periods of time, and the body really gets exhausted. And if you were to have this stress response going on and on for a very, very long time, you really get to a point of not being able to sort of tolerate it and getting extremely ill. So stress can be normal in certain situations, but if it is prolonged and if you keep doing this response, it can be very, very difficult. You also find that people tend to respond to stress in different ways. Some people get stressed very easily and some do not get stressed easily. So to really understand what's going on and why different people respond to stress in different ways, we need to really look at what stress means. Now, I promise that I will not have any more wordy slides. This is the one and only wordy slide in my presentation, but I just need to also highlight just a few points that might help us to understand what stress is. So it is really a pattern of disruptive physiological and psychological reactions to events. And that's the unpleasant feelings and responses that you have. And these reactions are a response to something that is threatening our ability to cope. So there is some real threat or danger. So that's one thing to remember. And the second thing to remember, the second part of my definition, is it's a condition of feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands placed on him or her exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to sort of gather. So the important point there is it is your perception. So it is perceiving that you do not have the ability to deal with a stressful event. So that is why sometimes person A and B are dealing with the same event, but person A perceives the situation to be extremely threatening and perceives that they do not have the resources to deal with that event and get stressed. Whereas person B faces the same event, does not perceive this as a threat, and does not perceive that the person does not have the ability to cope with it and hence does not get stressed. So you find that, let's say in university, you're thrown into situations where you're supposed to make a presentation. Some people are really good at public speaking and some people are not that good at public speaking. The person who is not that good at public speaking will really consider the situation an extremely threatening situation that they lack the resources to cope with and will get extremely stressed about it. Whereas someone else who really enjoys doing it will not consider this situation. It would be a cakewalk. Sometimes you might find that the person really does not have the skills at public speaking, but the person just enjoys talking and they really don't care what other people think. And hence the person still does not get stressed. So it is really our perception. And that tells us that we can really sort of change our response and respond in a different way to situations based on the way we look at the situation. So really, let's talk about what you could do with your stress. And I'd like to call them rays of stress management. This is just terms that might ring a bell for you. So first thing is recognize your stress. Now, a lot of the time, we suffer in our stress and our responses to stress, and we don't really know that we are really suffering from stress. So you might have the tummy aches, the butterflies in the tummy, or difficulties sleeping. You might find it difficult to concentrate. You're getting distracted. You are avoiding going out and doing stuff, and you're not feeling right, but you don't realize that you are feeling stressed. So one important thing is really to recognize your stress, understand how you respond when you're stressed, because the stress response is unique to you. How do you respond to stress? So for some people, it is very physical. They feel it in their body. Whereas for others, it's more sort of a cognitive thing. It's like sort of they're confused and they're drained and stuff like that. And for others, it could be a very emotional response. So they are really sad all the time, or they get angry. The slightest thing might get the person unsettled. So it is really important to reflect and figure out what is my response to stress, because then it helps you to sort of catch that response, or get alerted to the fact that, oh, I'm stressed and I need to do something with it. So I invite you to really reflect and think about what is it, or how would you respond, and what is your unique response to stress, and that helps you then to tackle it. Once you've really figured out that you are stressed, you then need to obviously do something about it. One thing you could do is just remove the trigger. So let's say you're in a very toxic relationship, which is making you stressed all the time. Perhaps that's not the right thing to do for you. Maybe you need to move away. Maybe you started, doing something new in your life, which is not the right thing for you. And that's making you feel down all the time. So maybe just remove the trigger and that might resolve things for you. But it might be that you can't always remove the trigger. Like, let's say exams. Now, exams is something in university that is something that stresses many of you all the time. You can't really say goodbye to your exams. But maybe you can redefine what it means to you. You have an exam. Do you have to think of it as a threat? Do you have to think of it as something that you do not have the ability to cope with? Perhaps you can think of it as, is this the end all and be all of things? Is this going to dictate everything? Let's say when you're 80 plus and you die, would this particular exam be the thing that people talk about? Maybe we cannot think about it in that sort of a simplistic way, because there could be these ripple effects. You have one exam, then it collects, it gets to the next one, and then it builds up, and then things in your life change because of one little tiny thing. But also you need to look at it in, you sort of take perspective and take things into perspective and sort of look at, okay, is this so important for me? Now, if it is, you can also think about the fact that you don't get stressed sometimes if you have actually sort of planned and organized yourself. You reorganize your life so that you can actually deal with the stressful situations that you have. So if you haven't studied and if you haven't sort of organized yourself, you probably are going to get stressed when it comes to exams. So the important thing, and I talked about this ripple effect, that one little exam might collect, and then things might get more difficult at the end. So you could sort of take things into your hand and make life a little more simple by getting prepared and getting organized and doing things on time so that you don't really get stressed when it comes to exam points. Another way that you can sort of deal with things is you can relieve your stress by talking to people. You can sort of talk to professionals if it comes to that point, but sort of releasing or sort of emotionally ventilating sort of the stress that you have. You can also resolve the problems that you have. So we talked about public speaking and problems that somebody might have when they have to make a presentation. So one thing is that you can come up with ways of resolving these problems. You can actually practice your speeches. You can get familiar with the presentation you have, and you can resolve the problem and make the situation that you feel stress, not something that stresses you out, once you've actually resolved the problem that you have. Relaxation is something that is super important. So relaxation also is, once again, what works for you. Is it listening to music? Is it doing something fun with friends? Is it meditation or yoga? What is it? So whatever works for you is what you should engage in. And recharge, this is something very, very important, and something that we tend to compromise on. Your sleep and your eating habits should be very healthy. Sometimes we sort of run out of time, and then we try to cut down on those basic needs. But the problem is that those are really basic needs, and they are essential for you to recharge yourself and sort of be able to respond in a very healthy, positive way to the problems that you have in life. So you can think about your stress management tools as a toolbox, and you need to figure out what is in your toolbox. For each person, like I said, your stress response could be very unique. Your toolbox can also be very unique to you. So for one person, it is about talking to others and discussing their problems to get over their stress. But for somebody else, it could be just distracting themselves and engaging in stuff that you enjoy. For somebody else, it's thinking things through, looking at the stressful event, thinking about the fact that, okay, maybe I could think about this in a different way. Maybe I can redefine the situation. So you need to figure out what is it that works for you and try to really build up on this toolbox, because sometimes you don't always you don't have the ability to always engage in a one particular thing. Let's say talking to family is what works for you, but sometimes there might be instances where you might not be able to approach your family members because let's say actually in this day and age we are all highly connected, so it is very unlikely that you will not be able to do it, but there are times that let's say you can't do it. So if that was to be your only way to deal with stress, you then suddenly don't have enough tools to deal with your stress. So you need to think, is there anything else that works for me, and try to build up on that toolbox and try to build up on that unique toolbox, because for what works for one person does not really work always for another person. And it is really important to figure out what your toolbox consists of, because when you are stressed, once you've identified your stress, you can then engage in what works for you. So let's now talk about the other aspect that you guys wanted me to talk about, which is work-life balance. Now, if you do have work-life balance, you end up not getting stressed. But as an undergraduate, it is very difficult sometimes to have that work-life balance, because you have a lot going on in your lives. There's a lot of studying to do and a lot of work to engage in, and sometimes it's very, very hard to sort of establish a balance. But you need to try to figure out what that balance is that you can achieve. And the important thing is, at the end of things, to feel that you lived a full life and that you're enjoying your life. And trying to establish that work-life balance will help you to reach that point of being able to really feel that you are enjoying yourself, you are leading a full life, and that you're basically happy. Unfortunately, our time is limited. The clock is always ticking, and your time is extremely, extremely precious. So you need to be able to figure out what you can do and what you cannot do within the limited time that you have. It is really unsettling to feel that the clock is always ticking, but in fact, it is actually always ticking. So it then becomes a point where you need to be able to pick and choose what you do and what you don't. Now, as an undergraduate, sometimes things are a bit fixed in a sense, like you have your academic programs, and you need to sort of follow that. So you can't pick and choose what you do and what you don't. You do need to do that. But you do have your free time and the rest of the time that is not accounted for from the university's point of view. So how do you deal with that? And that's what you need to figure out. How am I going to sort of schedule things and reach this balance that I need to reach, and help to sort of make your academic life also less stressful. So you've come across this grid, which places the different activities that you can have in your life in 4 quadrants. So things that are urgent and important, things that you have to do. So maybe you have exams coming up and you do have to study, and that has to be scheduled in somehow. But there are also things that are extremely important for you, but might not be that urgent. So for example, you want to go hiking, or you want to learn to play the guitar. It is very important to you, but maybe it's not that urgent at this point in time. So do you then spend the limited time you have on it? Or maybe it's something that you can postpone. There are things that are extremely urgent but not important. Maybe your friends are having a discussion on WhatsApp, but you have your studies to do as well, because the conversation will be over by the time your exams are over, but maybe it's not that important and you can sort of stay away from it. There are things that are neither urgent nor important, and those are the things that you can possibly dump from your life. Maybe you can delay them, or sort of just don't do them at all. So you need to sort of place the different stuff that you have in your life into these different quadrants to try and figure out what you do and what you don't, and what is urgent and what is important to you. Now, when it comes to this allocation, once again, it is very, very unique to each person. It really depends on your values and beliefs. So for one person, now I talked about hiking as something that might be important but not urgent. But for some, be really, really important. It is the way you manage your stress. So maybe that's something you actually have to schedule into your life. So depending on your values and beliefs, you need to sort of figure out how these 4 quadrants would be sort of get placed in the schedule that you have, and your values and beliefs will dictate what falls into which quadrant. So maybe going out with friends is super important for you. It's not something that you can delay, because it is something that you have to do. It is something that helps you reach that balance in life. So maybe go ahead and do it, because that is the thing that helps you de-stress. So you need to figure out what that is that goes into the urgent and important quadrant, and then go with that. Also, I talked about being organized earlier. Being organized, coming up with schedules. Now, lots of times, we talk about the fact that you need your to-do lists, you need your timetables, you need those schedules. And lots of times students get kind of sort of hassled with it. Making a schedule can also be a little too much of effort for you. But really, taking that effort is important, because it helps you to stay on track and not steer away from what is important to you. So being organized, getting those schedules going is very, very important. Now, as I said, sometimes there are things that you cannot steer away from, like your academic life. Things are set for you sometimes, your lectures or whatever, you need to attend to them. So there is a limit to how much you can decide what you do and what you don't do. But sometimes also you can find that there are things that are very, very important for you that, are super important in terms of establishing that work-life balance, but you really don't have the time to do it. That is true. And what you need to remember is that this journey that you're taking, or, your academic life, is something that will come to an end. Maybe things are extremely hectic, but there is an end point. So this will come to an end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And the journey might not be as bad as sometimes people perceive it to be. So you need to try and enjoy the journey while it lasts, because you might find that sometimes there are things that you're missing out on because you have just sort of forgotten to look around and enjoy what's going on around you, and get, because it's really not always the destination. It's sometimes really the journey also that is very, very important for you. Okay, another thing that we need to also think of is to be always very realistic with your plans and schedules. And now there is always this distinction between being a realist or a dreamer, but you can be both. You could be a realistic dreamer. And being a realistic dreamer is actually also understanding what your limits are in life, what you can do and what you might find difficult to do, because sometimes you just do not have the time to do certain things. And it is very, very important to sometimes just say no, because you might find that you just cannot tackle everything that you have in life. And saying no doesn't mean that you are being selfish. It's sometimes just that you do not have the time. So you need to know your limits and understand that sometimes there are instances where you just cannot do what you are asked to do. My final sort of my one before the last slide is something to take into consideration. Do not take life too seriously. This, I don't know whether you've seen this, the pale blue dot. This is what planet Earth looks like from space. This was a shot taken in 1990 from the Voyager 1 space probe. And you see how insignificant we look. It's just one little dot. And if you think about it, all these problems that we have in life and the things we can't do and things that we are stressing about suddenly lose their importance when you look at this pale blue dot, because when we look so the entire world looks so insignificant from afar, you wonder how insignificant our problems might be. So really don't take life too seriously. And finally, what I'd like to conclude with is to try and really live every moment. You sometimes find that, you're stressing about the past, the future, and you forget to really live that moment that you are in. And it is very, very important to sort of look around, look at what's happening around you and enjoy what you are experiencing at that very moment, because that is something that will help you then not regret, because regret is something that tends to pull us down in life. But when you live the moment that you are in to the fullest, you have done what you can, the maximum that you can do with that very moment in your life. So it is very important to try and live that every moment to the fullest. Okay, so these are just a few ideas I wanted to share. And really establishing a work-life balance is something that is something that we need to think about, something that works for you, and it is something that can be very, very unique to each person. Okay, thanks, Asel. Over to you.
Thank you very much, madam, for those very valuable insights on work-life balance. So with that, we are moving on to a question and answer session where our participants can ask questions from Dr. Santhushi. So you may type your questions in the chat box, or else you may unmute and ask your questions. So while the participants get ready with the questions, we have already received a few questions from the registration form. So madam will start off our discussion with those questions. So the first question is actually a small issue faced by one of our participants. He says that he's working from home most of the time and he's unable to manage his time and to complete his work due to working from home, and that has caused him considerable stress. And his question is how to get rid of this situation.
Okay, so dealing with the stress, or what is would the participants be comfortable in sort of elaborating or not?
Madam, you're not very audible.
Can you hear me now?
Not yet, madam.
Okay.
Now it's clear, madam. Now it's
Right.
audible.
Okay. Okay. So is it possible for the participant to elaborate? Is that possible?
So if the participant is present, please you may clarify your question in the chat box so you can unmute and maybe elaborate on this.
So let me talk while the person might respond. So really working from home, definitely, things are different now. Undergraduate life has changed. And for those of you who joined very recently, you didn't know what university is like, and now this is your first taster into what university life is, and it's so very different. So yes, it is difficult to establish that work-life balance because you are sitting at home, you're trying to work, and life is going on all around you. So if I've understood this question properly, this is about trying to establish a balance between staying at home and working. Is that correct, Asil?
Yes, madam. That's his main concern: how to balance while working from home.
Right. Well, I mean, there are certain things that you might not like to do, which you might have to do, which is you consider your workspace that, suddenly you have gone to university and you shut the door, and then suddenly you have transformed into sort of, you've gone to university and that's it. You cannot step out. If you step out, you're stepping out into a different land. It's not your home that you're stepping out to. You're stepping out into some other place. So you need to cut yourself out. If there are times that you have study, you have work, you have lectures, you have tutorials, all those things have to be done within those times. And during those times, you can't allow people to come and distract you, and you can't allow people to sort of take you away to, let's say, something's happening, you want to go and see what's going on in the kitchen or what's going on somewhere else. You need to sort of cut yourself away. It may be difficult, but when you shut your door, you need to try and think, okay, that's it, and now I'm not at home, I'm somewhere else. And you go out when your things are over. I'm not sure whether I really answered that question, but yes, it is something we all have problems with. As academics, we have, sessions now eating into late at night, into weekends sometimes, and, establishing that balance becomes difficult. But there are instances where, you need to sometimes say no to things, but as a student, you can't say no to, you can't say no, I don't want to attend a tutorial. And if that is the case, then you think about the fact that you've moved yourself away from what is distracting you, and you attend to that work.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. So we have one more questions that we have received from the registration form. We'll continue our discussion with that. In the meantime, other participants, you may please type in your queries in the chat box and keep the questions coming. Right. So, madam, again, this question is themed around the pandemic. So this participant wants to say that how can we change our mindset if we are limited to a same social and physical environment in this pandemic?
How do you change your mindset?
If you are limited to the same social and physical environment in this pandemic.
Okay. So this is a situation where there is a lot of unpredictability and uncertainty with the pandemic. and you have, things happening around you that you might not like. But really, the pandemic is something that we need to look at in sort of, this is something that will end. It seems like it is never ending, but it is something that is going to end. And it's about trying to, establish what you sort of need to do and try to go ahead and do it. Now, sorry. You have this situation where you don't know like what the end point would be, like, for a lot of you, you had to stop going to lectures, some of you couldn't go for clinicals, and it can be sometimes a little difficult to sort of think about what your future is going to hold for you. But really, all of you are in the same boat, and I think we are all finding it hard in terms of figuring out what sort of how sort of we can come out of it. But the important thing to remember is these things come and go. It will end. Looking at the resources that you have around you, there is a lot of help around you, your friends, your lecturers. There is a massive amount of resources that but was not available before, that is there to help you to try and cope and learn new skills, learn sort of now all of you are experts at sort of online learning, which was not something that was there earlier. So all these things are there and things are developing, innovations are happening, and we stick together and we deal with the situation together. So yes, it is unsettling, and it's not, you cannot deny that, but I think we stick together, work together, and we resolve the situation.
Thank you very much, madam, for that. If there are any more final questions from our participants, now is the time to ask. Since we are a little bit behind schedule, we can allow time for a couple more questions maybe, and then we'll be moving on to the next segment. So if you do have any questions, any clarifications from Dr. Santhushi, please do ask now. All right, we have a question in the chat. How to keep motivated when we are staying at home? Madam, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it's important to figure out what motivates you, but you are connected with others. It is important to be connected with your friends, and it's different because you don't have your study groups that you used to have, like physical study groups, which make you sometimes a bit stressed and make you actually want to study. Instead, you're located in different places, and you can go off track a bit because you don't have that constant stimulation happening. But remaining connected is something that really can help you to stay connected, what's going on. I mean, people are sometimes living at two different ends. Somebody is living in Australia, somebody is living in the US, somebody in Sri Lanka, some all over the place. And that's the way certain organizations work. Their employees are scattered all around the globe, but still they work together because they remain connected. So that connection and finding out what's going on can really, really be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. We can allow for maybe one more question before we move ahead. So if there's anything else. Right, we have one more question in the chat box. As most of us being to medical fraternity, what is your tip for us so that we can keep ourselves sane?
Keep yourself sane. Did
Yes,
I
ma'am.
write? Okay, right. So this is, yes, you have to acknowledge that being a medical student is very, very stressful. But it is something that you have chosen to do for various reasons. Maybe you just want to take care of people. Maybe it's something you look forward to, your whole life, and now something you are doing. So, I mean, enjoy that. What in medicine is going to be rewarding for you? Once again, it is unique to the person. Is it being able to help other people? Is it being able to manage other people? Is it being able to, go to a point where you come up with something groundbreaking? What is it that is um, what draws you to medicine? And that thing that draws you is what should inspire you to go through. Sometimes, yes, things are going to be stressful, things are going to make you feel like you are going insane, yes, but there is that sort of goal that you have and that inspiration that you have. Just keep that in mind. And yes, it will be tough. The journey is tough, but as I told you earlier, the journey does end. There is an end point to it. So you might as well enjoy it. You might go a little crazy here and there, but that's all about the journey. That makes the journey even more fun. But you are getting to your end point, and you have to have that point in mind when you do your journey and you travel through this maze that you are traveling through at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. Are there any other questions from the audience? All right, I received one more question from one of our participants. If you are hoping to help a person who is undergoing a stressful situation, how do you identify that a person is in stress? Like, what are the symptoms to identify that person and how to deal with it? I think it's quite a broad question, I think, madam. So, uh, any insights on this?
Right. So each person, as I said, each person deals with stress in different ways. You might have people getting very emotional. You might find people's behaviors changing. So if it is your friend, sometimes you might be able to understand what is unique to your friend. And really also sort of just talking to the person and finding out, is there something that's making them stressed? Is there something they're worrying about? That might be very helpful. And if it's someone close to you, hopefully that person will talk to you. In fact, I did some research which looked at problems. I was looking at depression in medical students and really undergraduates. And I found that friends was one of the primary sources that people or students rather used to fall back on when they were in trouble and when they needed help. So being able to just approach your friend and asking that person, are you feeling stressed? Is there something worrying you? That in itself might help that person emotionally ventilate. Once you've identified that, you need to find out, is it something that is stress? Is it something that is a little more serious? If it is something that's more serious, you need to try and get the necessary assistance for that person. It might be just approaching one of your academic staff members. It might be really approaching a student counselor or professional. Um, you need to find out what that help might be. It might be just something very simple. You might need to just watch a movie with your friend, but it might be something a little more complicated as well. Um, it's always good to sort of not try to, only manage things on your own. You can consult with someone to find out if, your friend might need further assistance. But the primary thing to do is give a helping hand to then take the next steps, because what works that for one person, as I told you, might not work for another person. So it's always trying to find what is unique to that person, and then going on to try and deal with the situation.
Thank you very much, madam. And that will conclude our first segment of this event. And thank you, madam, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. We are truly privileged to have you as a resource person in this event. And with that, let me hand controls to Rotaract Shweta to continue with the proceedings.
Yes, thank you. Once again, I would like to thank you, ma'am, for all the wonderful information that you provided to us today. It was truly very enlightening and very insightful. Especially, I'm glad that you could also answer so many of our questions. So yeah, we are truly very grateful for all the knowledge that you have given to us today. And with this, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our second speaker, who is a Rotaractor Murali Krishna from our Rotaract Club of Downtown Davao, Philippines. He is an MD student from the Davao Medical School Foundation and is certified by the Harvard Medical School for participating in the enduring material titled General Psychiatric Management for BPD. He has also been awarded as the best delegate in the UN Women at the International MUN. And today he'll be talking to us about the importance of socialization and meaningful relationships in personal and professional lives. So with that, I would like to hand over the floor to Krishna. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Shweta, can you please make the username screen sharer as one of the co-hosts for screen sharing?
Yeah, sure. Okay, is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. All right. So good evening, everyone. I am Protractor Murali Krishna, and you can just call me Krishna. So I'll be just discussing a very small and one of the most important topics that, irrespective of what your profession is, what your age group is really important for us. So our topic for today that I'll be discussing would be socialization and importance of friendship and meaningful relationships in personal and professional lives. Thank you so my fellow clubmate for introducing me. I've already introduced myself, so we'll skip further. But before we actually dive into the topic, I would really like you all to ponder upon this one aspect that I really like. So before I start a presentation, I would like you to keep this at the back of your mind, so that at the end, when you absorb all of it and then you still ponder on it, your perspective might change. So when an idea is born, a new hope arises. Here you are, all the members who have joined now, a dreamer who is determined to make the world a better place every day. You're here as a Rotaractor or as a being a part of medical fraternity. You're here to make this place better for yourself, for your loved ones, and for everyone. So are your ideas destined for prosperity or downfall? We have to ponder on that. So whatever we do, even a very small step in a day, let it be missing out your regular water intake. Even a small decision like that, is it destined to prosperity or your downfall? So today they are more in our hands than ever before. So we are very lucky to have every opportunity right in our hands, every choice, every decision right now with us, and our whole future, our whole path lies in our hands. Sorry for that disconnection. So now we focus on socialization. So we need to understand that it's a lifetime process of learning. It's not something that you can just learn, at a particular time and then you know what it is. It's something that you learn gradually, and it's a continuous process. It never ends. So it's an activity of mixing and learning with other people in collaboration on social grounds. We'll dwell more on this, understanding why it is important, and the most important thing, is it only for a certain group of people? Is it only for the teens or the so-called Gen Z? Let's find it out by further dwelling on it. We need to accept the fact that we are not born social. All that we are born with are two things: instinct of survival, that is hunger and trying to keep yourself safe, and fear, two basic fears, that is fear of falling or either fear of getting harmed. We are not born social, we become social. So we are just like other beings on this planet, but we learn how to be social by interacting with people around us. So you see, that's an interacting and a mixed learning. So despite of uh, not being born as a social animal, uh, we are a social animal, so we need to learn to socialize, right? And it's a huge part of what we are, what you are, what I am, and what our friends are, because that determines your personality. The first thing, it converts the biological being into a social being. As I already told you, you're just born with basic instincts, but you eventually interact with your mother, your father, your people surrounding you. You learn behavior, you learn certain aspects of life where you know how to behave in certain ways. You behave certainly when you are just within your family. You behave a certain way when your friends come over. You behave a certain way when you go out. So you learn to become a social being. This process converts you, so it contributes to the development of your personality. See, certain people might just love socializing, love hanging out, so their personality is kind of outspoken. They are very open book kind of people. So it determines your personality, the way you socialize. Helps you more helps you to be more regulated and disciplined. So there are many studies being conducted, and you might well know about this one, where people, despite of placing fake cameras, if you just put out a notion that you're being monitored, people tend to be more uh, focused, or tend to be more cautious about their behavior, because we are kind of people where we always think about being judged. That's partially okay and not okay, but we have that kind of thinking, and we always have this constant fear of eyes on us, right? So socialization actually helps you in being more regulated and disciplined. It tells you about more customs, more behaviors, or more or certain aspects of society where you have to behave a certain way. It helps you to enact different roles. See, when you socialize with your friends, for example, when we were actually coming together by putting this exchange program, the members who interacted with us had a certain responsibility, because they were socializing with us in terms of bringing this program to existence. So they took up their roles of being organizers. So when we go back to our schools, our colleges, we have a role of being a student. So we socialize with the school and with the people at school as students. So it's a very relative thing. It varies from situation to situation and person to person. So it helps you in enacting different roles, provides you knowledge and knowledge of different skills. So for example, I have a friend who is a skater, for example, and I socialize with him, I hang out with him. So it helps me knowing more about skating, because he is something that he has, something or some knowledge on the topic which I don't. So when I socialize, I learn more stuff. I learn more about different skills out there. So when you go out and then, like, for example, I'll put this direct in context of medical students. When we are out there and we have like free periods, if you socialize with the so-called nerd group of the college where they just sit around and they discuss different stuff, if you socialize with them, you might learn about different aspects of more new technology coming out, or different medical research is being done. If you socialize with the so-called stereotypical cool kids, you might know about more good places out there. You might know about more restaurants which are having exclusive offers, or more malls where you have exclusive discounts going on. So you learn different knowledge of different skills when you socialize. You guys would have probably known all of this. To be honest, everyone knows. But let's use a hook. Let me sling a question. So the question is, what are the ways of socialization? Right? That makes us ponder, right? We just know we have to socialize. It's good for us. But what are the ways of socialization? The first thing, always remember that you have to always be the best of your previous self. You have to constantly evolve in terms of psychologically, in terms of your own personal records and goals. So when you socialize, there are three basic aspects that you have to really learn, so that you actually mingle into any group and then you be at ease when you're talking to them. All right. So the first and the most important is maintain an open and positive frame of mind and respect boundaries. When you have a positive, frame of mind, you tend to take up things rather than literally. You tend to take things into a better perspective, into a better prerogative. You will be like, if someone comes up and then just says like, dude, you have a great watch, you might think like, is he commenting on my watch because it doesn't look expensive? Or is he commenting on my watch because it's looking tacky, it doesn't match with my dress? You might overthink this. He might have just complimented you because you watch. So how do you keep it simple? By having a positive frame of mind. And you have to respect boundaries. There are certain boundaries everyone exhibit, and then you have to be very respectful towards them if you try to socialize into different groups. Because everyone has a background of different ethnicity, culture, religion, and there are various aspects to it. Importantly, face and body language makes more impact than your words. So always remember that you have a very positive facial expression or your body language when you're talking to someone. Let's bring this again to the perspective of being a medical student, because we all are. When you're talking or when you're interacting with a patient, you would like to have an approach of leaning forward, showing your interest, and always having a neutral expression to maintain professionalism. Never frown or smile too much, because the patient is obviously here or consulting you because he or she might have a problem. So always maintain a neutral expression. Always when you're having a conversation, make sure that you're utilizing the space around you, right? You're utilizing your hands while communicating, you're utilizing your facial expressions, because they tend to speak louder than words. Always have a sense of humor and be attentive about what's happening around you. So I recently came up with this ideology of one of the Harvard scientists who was actually lecturing on this about a battery rule. So you can take this in terms of a bank rule or a battery rule. I'll just explain to you and you can. So for example, can you, yes. All right. You can see this chart, right? Where there is battery full to empty and then recharge, right? Let's remember that image in our brain. Or just remember with a bowl of water with empty coins and a bowl with full coins, and then the spectrum. So what happens is an extrovert person gains energy when he or she interacts more, and an introvert person loses energy, not like the actual your body energy and then you become lethargic. No, not like that, but generally in general terms. So when an extrovert person wakes up in the morning, goes out there, talks to people, hangs out, goes have breakfast, and then runs into an old friend, and then goes out to a party at the night, and then at the end of the day, he's fully recharged because he's an extrovert. If the same situation an introvert is put into, he'll drain out his energy. So always try to hang out with people where they match your frequency. If an introvert and extrovert person goes out, the extrovert person will do all the talking for him, and the introvert person will still be able to socialize. So the aspect of understanding this rule, the introvert person has to don't go out of his comfort zone, for socializing. Just find a friend or a buddy who will help you out in doing that. You'll socialize, but he'll be doing all the work, which he'll be very happy, very happy and at ease to do. And you'll socialize also, because socialization is something that introvert people are lacking in. They really want to go out there and socialize, but there are certain aspects which restrict them. So this battery rule will really help you out in doing that. So know the spots. Know these are the hot spots for your socialization. Family get-togethers, family dinings, whenever you sit together, you talk, whenever we can socialize. Mass media. This is an important aspect in all our lives at the moment, because pretty much we are communicating with each other via mass media. So you can socialize as we are doing right now. Religious and cultural activities or places where they host them. Legal systems in the sense, when you socialize with people who are actually appointed to do certain stuff, like for example, you go out to a restaurant, and then there are certain aspects that you have to follow. You have to, like, you can't do certain things, like you can't take your home cooked food and go eat there, right? So you have to call a waiter, then you have to go pay the bill, and then there's a proper system to it. So you're socializing there and following a certain set of rules. When you're walking on the road, you're not supposed to jaywalk. You see someone that you stop them, you socialize. There's a legal system ordained, and then you have made a friend whom you have taught a new rule today. And then another spot is your self time. Guys, never neglect this, because many tend to do this. This will actually drain your social battery also if you don't have your self time. Always have your self alone time where you socialize with yourself, where you learn more about yourself, where you learn which song do you like more, or what kind of books you're into. Bringing us to the next aspect, that is interpersonal relationships and development. I hope the dynamics are loading fine. Yeah. So interpersonal relationships are defined as social and emotional interaction between two or more individuals in an environment. So the dynamics would be, when you develop an interpersonal relationship, it aids in your personal growth and your personal development. If you have a relationship, for example, relationship, let me tell you, it's a very general term, and then many might have it's a very variable term which has multiple definitions in different contexts. So if you have just a relation, an emotional or an interactive relation with another individual, it will aid you in your personal growth and will help you in development. It can stand as one of your sources of joy, your source of security, your source of emotional bonding. It can help you in establishing your personal identity as well. So let's talk about the types of relationship. There's friendship, old and good. There's family, which always got your back. You have your professional relationships. Professional relationships can majorly focus on your workplace relationships, and then you have the love of your life, that relationship. Then you have a relationship that where you have a permanent relationship which you make with another individual. that lasts that usually lasts long lifetime. That's marriage. And then you have your siblinghood. I specifically made this term like this because nowadays we have a stage above friendship. That's, you call them your bro, you call them your sis. So siblinghood, irrespective of your siblings in the family, here as well. You have your acquaintances, you have your casual relationships, and then you have your special bonds, which you actually cannot describe, but they are really close to your heart. And then we have these special bond also includes your pets. So, and then we have a transitional relationship. So these are mostly platonic relationships where you don't actually expect much or you don't actually give much, but the relationship exists. And then you're actually fond of it as well. So there are 4 phases, very basic phases, and these are also variable. And it just works out like theory of relativity. It actually varies. So orientation is when you initially meet or you initially have the conversation. Identification is identifying the likes and dislikes of each other. Exploitation is where you start having the problems, where you tend to, there are 2 roles in this phase. One is speaker, one is listener. So the problem arises mostly when there are 2 speakers or 2 listeners and no one is talking in 2 listeners and no one is listening in 2 speakers. So the situation gets, so there's usually a speaker and one complains and one listens. And if they resolve the problem, they actually go back to the phase of identification where they again focus on each other's likes and dislikes. If not, they pass into the 4th stage after the resolution, that is dissolving the relationship. So it ends there. So if we talk this in terms of people in medical fraternity or people related to this aspect of the society, orientation is when you first meet your patient. Identification is when you establish your rapport with them. Exploitation is when you are the listener and your patient is the speaker. And this role, by the end of that phase, converts. You become the speaker and the patient becomes the listener. Now you will give the solution to the patient's problem. So he becomes the listener. And there's resolution where the patient is all fine and then your relationship for that particular consultation ends, but you're still the follow-up physician. So now we focus on the barriers or the obstacles. So you have to understand that how one of the major aspects of this particular session is how do you actually establish meaningful relationships? You do that by crossing these barriers. So let's focus on these 3 basic barriers. What are those? First is a situational barrier. These can actually come up very often. A person might be really complex in interaction. You never know. It's sometimes like you're walking around eggshells. You never know what might offend them, what might not. Which situation can make them uncomfortable, which cannot. Sometimes not able to find the right time. Long distance relationships, or there are adverse environmental situations like you might be into, for example, you're driving and then the person calls up and then wants to socialize, wants to talk to you, and then you're driving, you can't do that. So that's a situational barrier. Comes out personal barriers. This is one of the aspects where people really don't like to step out of their comfort zone and deal with them. But if you do, might as well work for you being a better socializer. So fear of rejection. Most of the time people are just afraid of getting rejected or hearing no for an answer. So just prepare yourself. It's not the end of the world if someone rejects you or if you hear no. Might as well say yes. So take your chances. So lack of flexibility, ineffective communication. See, again, communication is the key. Use your facial expressions, your hands, perfect environment, all those aspects that we have discussed. Lack of honesty and trust and feeling of insecurity can always be an obstacle. So if we get rid of them, we actually get rid of our personal barriers, which brings us to the last barrier, that is socio-cultural barrier. This barrier might not exist for many, but it does. Because let's accept the fact, world is full of different people, different cultures, different languages, different social, economic diversities. There is ethnic diversity. So you never know whom you might run into. So always try to, because there are certain aspects of your religion or your culture that might be offending, but the person might not know. So always respect that. He or she might not have any information on that. So just always, which brings us to the first point, that is have an open and a positive frame of mindset. Now, this is a very tricky part of maintaining a relationship with yourself, with other individuals. Anyway, and this is very similar to the one which doctor was explaining, the doctor speaker before me. So this is called a jury window. So this is divided into 4 aspects: the known to others and the unknown to others. So the first, that is upper left cubicle, actually represents, that is known to others and known to you. All right. So for example, my friends know what kind of temperament I have, what kind of behavior I hold. So that is known to both me and my friends, right? The second would be your right upper cube, which is unknown to you but known to others. So for example, right now I'm talking to you, I can see myself right there in the camera, I know what my expressions are. So I but this doesn't happen in real life. So when you're hanging out with people, you might talk in certain way and you might have a habit, like for example, scratchy hair. You always might do this, or you might always have your hand on your face, or you might get sweaty. You might not know, or you have any subconscious behavior. Maybe you're a stress leg shaker. You keep shaking your leg. You might not consciously know that you're doing it, but others do notice that. So this is one aspect. The third would be your left lower cube, that is hidden, known to you but not by others. This is a very cheeky aspect of an individual. Only that person for the whole lifetime would know what that aspect or what that side of themselves is, and no one would ever know. And that's completely fine because that's what makes you unique. That's what makes you you. And then we have the fourth cube, that is unknown by both you and others. You never know. You might develop a new pattern of behavior. You might have suppressed certain feelings that you are not aware of, and then obviously others are not aware if you're not aware, and then they might come up someday. So these are unknown aspects by both you and the others. And this circle, the unknown, the fourth cube, I wish I could circle it here, is the very tricky part of a person's personality, because you never know what's going to come up. So it's like a very dangerous cocktail. We have to be very sure that we are always exploring this aspect by, again, breaking down those 3 barriers. So that was the whole layout for you guys. Now that brings us to the section of questions. Anyone with questions? I'm sure it was a very simple explanation. Everyone might have understood it and everyone knows it, because you all are very smart, because the first step that you have taken is being a part of Rotaract Club. So whom am I giving the lecture to? Anyway, questions?
Krishna, there are some questions that people have already asked. So I would, throw them to you so you can answer them. So
Sure.
the first question is, what do you think about this year's theme, which is mental health in an unequal world?
Well, that's a very brilliant and updated question. So whoever came up with that question, really thanks, because now I feel that the world is actually dwelling on something that is meaningful. So this year's World Mental Health Day was based on mental health in unequal worlds, because every time we are just talking about mental health, we are making it a cliche kind of topic. So yeah, always bringing that into conversation. We have to focus that mental health is again a variable topic. It can be differently defined for every individual. So when this year they announced this topic, I was really happy, because when they talk about unequal worlds, there are certain aspects of our social flowchart, or unfortunately people who are in the lower part of that, they actually experience more mental stress, in terms of financially, health, etc. But they have nothing to outsource that or channelize that mental illness or that trauma towards something. They can't. Whereas people of high class society, they every now and then can go to a therapist. Or let's zoom out a bit. Let's focus on the globe now. People in America, just coining out this randomly, or any Western world can come out with mental health solutions, and they can be accepted very fast. Let's focus on our Asian aspect, where it's still a taboo, where still people are not ready to accept that mental illness is a thing. So unequal words, mental issues are very different. And by making this the topic of this year, I'm sure would have changed many mindsets. So this is my take on this.
Thank you, Krishna. There's another question, which is how to stay strong irrespective of what happens.
Well, that's a nice question as well. So I would like to actually answer this question by coining another question to the person who have asked this. Why do you always want to feel okay? So to the person who actually wrote this, it's okay to feel not okay. You get it? We are not perfect beings. We are entitled to having expressions. We are entitled to having our opinions. We are entitled to have feelings and emotions. And it's completely okay if you're not feeling okay. That's a natural part of your personality, your everything about you. That's completely natural to not feel okay. You have to accept that. If I'm not feeling okay, there might be a certain reason behind it. If not, then why should I not feel okay? If there is, let's tackle that. Let's make it aim of the day to get rid of it. If that's bothering me or that's making me feel at unease, right? When you actually have this feeling of everything should be okay, that actually messes with your mind, that actually stresses you out more. Here, I would like to really bring out this basic formula which works for me, and I'm sure will work for you. And you all might have seen this and you know about it, but you actually need to implement this in your life. That is, all is well. So whenever you feel stressed out, just whenever you feel that things are not going okay, just say all is well. Don't say all is well, or don't come up with different perfect pronunciation. Just say all is well in the most imperfect way. That will actually make you feel better. So yeah.
I think we can allow for a few more questions in the chat box if there are any. Okay, if there are no more questions, then I think I would like to extend my thanks to Krishna for the wonderful and insightful talk that he gave today and for answering all the questions brilliantly. So thank you for that, Krishna. And we'd like to move on and end today's meeting. For that, I would like to call the president of the Rotaract Club of Downtown Davao, Ronish Ghosh, to give the vote of thanks and also the ending ment.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of the Rotaract Club of Downtown Davao and the Rotaract Club of University of Colombo Faculty of Medicine, would extend a very big thank you to our two speakers of the day, Dr. Santhushi and Dr. Murali, for their efforts towards spreading awareness on mental health. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start to roll weeks ago. It requires planning and bird's eye for details. We have been very fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated Rotaractors. Finally, this event wouldn't have been successful without the active participation of an amazing audience. Thank you all for gracing this event with your presence. Uh, Before I end, I would like to request you all to follow us on our Instagram handles at the rate RCD Davao and at the rate Rotaract FOM. It's been a great pleasure hosting this event. Hasta la vista.
Once again, I'd like to thank all the speakers for today and all the participants, and especially the teams responsible for this wonderful event that was planned today. Thank you all for attending this event. Have a good night.